everyone. In this week's lab, we're going to study population ecology. We're going to focus on how populations grow, decline, and do some fun activities. All right, so for this lab, we're actually going to start a little bit out of order. So we're going to do part 3 first. So as of right now, go ahead and take out your lab manual and flip to part 3, and we're going to talk about predator-prey dynamics. So in this part of the lab, we're going to use some equation to estimate how much calorie a prey item can give its predator when they're being consumed. The formula that we're working with comes from the optimal foraging theory. So, this theory states that as long as you know how much prey are in an area, what the calorie a prey can offer, and the cost that it takes to find the prey, and the handling time of the prey, you can essentially calculate how much energy a prey item can give their predator when when being consumed. So, going back in this formula, N prey means density of prey. So, this is the number of prey that a predator can encounter per unit of time. E prey is how much calorie a prey item can offer its predator as a whole. You have to subtract this from the cost of searching. So it does take time. It is costly to go out, stalk, and hunt a prey item. So you have to take that into account. All of this is divided by 1 plus N prey, which is again the density of prey per unit of time, and H. H is the handling time. So handling time means that once a predator has caught their prey item, how long is it going to take to kill, wrangle the prey? So if you know all of the numbers for these variables, you can actually find the calorie that a prey item can offer its predator after we have taken into account of finding the prey item and handling the prey item. So a hypothetical setup for this experiment would be a bowl. Okay, so the bowl represents the environment. Inside the bowl, we're going to put 25 seeds without shells. This is going to represent prey items that are easier to kill because they don't have a shell. Then we're going to add seeds with the shells. This represents prey items that are harder to kill. And then all of the seeds that are a little bit smaller, there are going to be 50 seeds in total in this bowl. This is going to be the non-prey item. So for the first experiment, let's go ahead and just do this in the lab manual. And go ahead and open up to experiment A. And for this table, we're going to first act as predator and go after animals that are easier to handle. So this is going to be represented by the seeds without the shell. The first variable that we're going to find is N prey. Remember, N prey, what we're trying to determine right now, is the encounter time. How many prey items do we encounter in a given area? So all we're going to pretend to do is take a pair of forceps and just go into this bowl and pick out as much seeds as we can without the shell within 30 seconds. So for the first 30 seconds when we do this, let's say hypothetically we were able to take out 17 seeds, okay? And then we're going to restart this all over again. And then for the second time, we are able to pick out 18 seeds. Remember, these are the seeds without the shells. This represents prey items that are easier to kill. But as of right now, we're just finding the N prey. And then for the third trial, we're able to pick out 19 seeds without the shells. So all of this right now is just trying to find N prey, the encounter rate. So we take the average of all these three trials and it's going to be 18. The average of 17, 18, and 19 is 18. To find N prey, we take prey divided by seconds. So we take this average 18 divided by seconds. We were able to not hunt, but we were given 30 seconds to find these seeds without the shell. So 18 divided by 30, that reduces down to 3/5. So this translates to every 5 seconds we encounter three prey items. So for every 5 seconds, we saw three seeds without shells. In reality, this is going to mean every 5 seconds we found three animals, three preys that were easy to kill. So this is how we get end prey. This is how we get the end prey. Next, we're going to find the handling time. So how long does it take, or how long does it take to handle the animal, to wrangle the animal, essentially to kill the prey item? So we're going to take a pair of scissors. Again, this is hypothetically. Go ahead and work on this portion in your lab manual. So here are the values. So from the first trial, from those 17 seeds that we caught, we were able to take a pair of scissors and cut 14 of them in half. This represents you handling the animal. From the second trial, out of those 18 seeds that we caught, we were able to cut 15 of them in half. And again, we were given 30 seconds to handle the animal. From the third trial, out of those 19 seeds that we caught, we were able to cut 16 of them in half. So the averages of 14, 15, and 16 is 15. And for the handling time, it's now going to be seconds divided by prey. So it's going to be 30 seconds divided by 15 right here, and this reduces down to 2. So what this translates to is that for every 2 seconds, we were able to kill one prey. Now remember, these are the prey items that are easy to kill. We're going to move into experiment B now. We're going to do the same thing, but this time we're going after the seeds with the shells. So these are going to be prey animals that are harder to kill. So we were given 30 seconds to hunt to find these animals, and we got the same averages from the same number from the first time. So again, it reduces down to 18 divided by 30. This reduces down to 3/5. As a reminder, what this means is that for every 5 seconds, we were able to encounter three prey items. Now, when we find the handling time, it's going to be a little bit different. The reason why is, now remember, these are the seeds with the shells. So it's going to be a little bit harder to cut them in half. So out of those 17 seeds that we caught the first time, we were only able to cut 2 of those seeds in half. It's harder. Out of those 18 seeds we caught the second time, we were only able to cut 3 of those in half. And then out of the 19 seeds that we caught in the third trial, we were only able to cut 4 of them in half. So now the average is going to be 3. 2, 3, 4, the average is 3. And the handling time, we were given 30 seconds again. It's 30 seconds divided by prey, which is this number. So it's 30 seconds divided by 3. This reduces down to 10. So what this means is it takes you 10 seconds this time to kill one prey item, while before it only took us 2 seconds to kill one prey item. But this makes sense because in the first time, the seeds didn't have the shells. These are animals that are easier to kill, while the second time, we're meeting animals that are harder to kill. So it's going to take a longer time to handle them. So this is 10 seconds to handle one prey item. So now we have calculated the end prey along with the handling time. The E prey and the C searching are given to you. So this is a very simplified example because we know that these values are not always going to be as consistent like this in the real world. But with this hypothetical value, if you plug in all of the variables into this equation, you can find the caloric gain that each prey item can give its predator. Each seeds can give its predator in our scenario. So without even plugging it in, you know that the seeds with the longer handling time, so these are the seeds with the shells, these are animals that are harder to kill, it's going to give the predator a lower caloric intake overall, assuming all the other variables are same, because the handling is in the denominator. So for this, all you have to do is plug in the values into the equation and solve. Now remember, please pay attention to order of operation. So remember to multiply everything first before you subtract C searching. and then down in the denominator, multiply this before you add it to 1. So when we compute these numbers, we plug it in. The seeds with the shells, these are the animals that are harder to kill. It's going to give the predator a caloric intake of 0.0427 calories per second, while the seeds without the shells, these are prey items that are easier to kill. It's going to give the predator a higher caloric intake over time. Make sure that you are plugging in the values into your calculator and confirming that you're getting the same numbers here. If you're getting different numbers, that means that your order of operations are incorrect. Now, keep in mind, in the real world, it's a little bit more complicated than this. It's actually much more complicated. In this example, it's obviously that it's easier to go after the animals that are easier to handle. But in the real world, sometimes animals that are harder to handle, at the end, they're going to give the predator more calories because they can offer more um, more prey, more initial calorie at the very beginning, at the very initial state. But here we're taking into account of the total calorie that we get after we search the prey, after we handle it, because doing all of those actions burn calories as well. So keep in mind that this is just an overly simplified example. All right, so now we're going to switch back and move to part one. So, part one of this lab looks at population growth and decline. So, we're going to get used to some terms that can describe a population and estimate some population growth over time. So, when we talk about a population, we are looking at individuals that live and interact with each other in a common area. So, these individuals, they have to be of the same species. They need to be able to reproduce with one another. There are two things that can contribute to population growth. Birth and immigration are going to contribute to the growth of a population when there are new babies being born and when there are new individuals coming into an area. At the same time, the two main factors that can contribute to population decline are going to be death and immigration, individuals dying and individuals leaving that area. So, if we want to determine how a population can grow, there are many different things that we can take into account. The first thing is looking at the timing of the reproductive events. Some animals, they have discrete reproduction. So this means that they can only give birth at a certain time during the year. Everywhere, any other time, you're not going to see a high growth. So individuals that have discrete reproductions, examples are going to be um, bears, some seals, and some deers. These are animals that typically give birth during the springtime when conditions are more favorable. A lot of insects as well can have discrete reproduction. Now, individuals with continuous reproduction, this is when seasons does not affect when they reproduce. So, individuals like humans, lions, cats, rats, the seasons of the year does not affect them. They can pretty much give birth whenever. So, looking at the timing of reproductive events can help you estimate population growth as well. You know, seasonal birth, you're only going to see that increase in population at a specific time of the year. While with continuous reproduction, population growth is um, is a little bit harder to predict because these animals can give birth whenever. Now, when you're characterizing a population, um, these can also affect their growth as well. There are some individuals that have non-overlapping generations. These are individuals where the adults, they produce the offspring, but they are not around when the offspring reaches sexual maturity. So this doesn't mean that they die right away, but they're just not going to be around when the offsprings are sexually mature. So some insects, squids, some plants as well have non-overlapping generations. Then in overlapping generation, this is when the parents are still alive when their offspring reaches sexual maturity. And sometimes both of the parents and the offspring can be reproducing and giving birth at the same times. So a lot of mammals fall under overlapping generation. Now, For parameters, other parameters that also can contribute to population growth and can also characterize a population, we can also take a look at generation time. Generation time is the time at birth to when the individuals become sexual, until the individual reaches sexual maturity. So for some individuals, they have a very short generation times. A lot of insects, they're born, and then within a matter of weeks, they are sexually mature and can reproduce. So their population can grow pretty rapidly. And then in some individuals with a longer generation times, this is going to take decades, years before the population can start reproducing, can reach sexual maturity and start reproducing. Some species of sharks, it actually takes them 18 years before the offspring reaches sexual maturity. Humans, the age is around 10 to 12. This is when puberty hits. So remember, generation time is when at birth to when they reach sexual maturity. Okay? It doesn't mean that they need to reproduce, but it's just birth to when they can reproduce. Okay, we can also take a look at age class structure as well. In populations with a lot of pre and post reproductive individuals, these are individuals that cannot reproduce, the population is probably going to grow more slowly, while in populations with a lot of reproducing individuals, the population can grow a little bit more faster. So now that we know those terms, we can apply it to some formulas to predict population growth and also maybe some decline as well. In population A, we are going to look at a population with overlapping generation. So, assuming that the parents are not dying when their offspring reaches sexual maturity, we're just going to take into account of death is going to be zero across the board. Now, the formula that we're using in this equation is going to be the change in population over the change in time. This is essentially the number of birth. So lambda is the rate of growth, and naught, that's just going to be the population size. And remember, here we have discrete population. So individuals are giving birth at a specific time in the year, and with overlapping generation, the adults are still around when their offspring reaches sexual maturity. And as a reminder, death is going to be zero in our scenario here because the parents are not dying. Okay, we're just going to assume that the parents are not dying. Again, overly simplified example, but this is just to get you to understanding how to use these equations. So if you take a look, okay, go ahead and start working on population A, and you can fill out these table as well. So we'll do the first few together. We start off with an initial population of 100, okay? When we're going to plug 100 into the equation here, multiply by 1.5 because that is the rate of growth. So 100 times 1.5, that's going to give you 150. Now 150 is just the number of birth. It's not the number of the total population. To find the number of the total population, we have to add 150 to the adults because remember the parents are still around. So now we end up with a total population of 250. So now 250 is going to go into our next starting. Now to find the number here, we're going to take 250 multiplied by 1.5. 250 multiplied by 1.5, which is the rate of growth, that is going to be 375. So now to find the total population down here, you have to take 250 plus 375, and that's going to give you 625. Okay, so 625 now is going to go into N2. Okay, so this is a discrete population with overlapping generation when the parents are not dying. So go ahead and complete this entire population A by yourself at home. And once you're done with this, you can go ahead and continue on to population B. So now population B, we're still working with discrete population, but now the parents are dying because now we have non-overlapping generation. So there is going to be the death number right here. The death number is going to be the reproducing individual, the parents essentially. So if we take a look at the starting population, which is 100, we have to multiply 100 to the rate of growth, which is still 1.5. So that is 150. But now we have to take into account that the parents are dying. If the parents are dying, we're only left with the offspring. So the total number here is just 150. If you want to, you can add 100 and 150. That's 250. Subtract 100 from it, which is the number of the parents, and you end up with 150. But regardless, a more simple way to understand this is that if the parents are not around, they're dying. You're only left with the newborns, the individual. So the number is 150. So now the individual 150 is going to move into the next starting. So now you have adults that there are going to be 150 adults that can be reproducing with one another. The rate of growth is 1.5, so you take 150 multiply by 1.5. You end up with 225 offspring. Okay? The adults are going to die. So 150 adults are dying because these are the initial reproducing individuals to begin with. So you're only left with 225 individuals. These are the offspring, okay, that were born. So now the 225 offspring, they're going to grow, reach a sexual maturity, and then reproduce, and you can go ahead and complete this entire table as well. Now remember, this is a discrete population with non-overlapping generation where the adults are dying. When you're done with that, go ahead and graph population A and B on here. This is the generation time, and this is the population time. So go ahead and graph that and see ultimately which population is going to have a higher rate of growth and explain why. So moving on to population C, this is going to be a population that is growing exponentially. So there are some populations in the wild that have unlimited resource where as of right now their population can just grow and grow and grow. And we're going to assume that they have continuous reproduction. They can give birth at any time during the year. So this is a pretty simple one to think about because if you have a population that's growing initially, you can use this simple equation, and the only thing that you would have to change is just a t, the timing at each generation. So we start off with an initial population of 100. The rate of growth is going to be represented by R now, and the rate of growth is 1.5. E in your scientific calculator later is going to be represented as exponential growth. So make sure you know how to find the E function in your calculator. So all we're going to do to get to the initial population N1 is to take the initial population here, multiply it by E to the power of 1.5 times 1. So here, since it's the first generation, the time is going to be 1. And then when you do that, you're going to get a total of 448. Now, when you continue on to find N2, because we're using exponential growth, you don't have to change the initial population here. So keep the initial population 100 for every single time you use this equation. The only thing that you're going to change is just the t. So moving on to find N2, go ahead and keep the initial population the same, which is 100, e to the power of 1.5, but now instead of multiplying t as 1, for the second generation, it's going to be 2. Okay? So that is how you work with the exponential growth formula. And when you do that, you should get 2009 for N2. Go ahead and repeat this for N3 and N4. Remember, the only thing you're changing is the t. Okay? Keep the initial population here as 100 because we're working with exponential growth. When you graph population A, B, and C all the way until N4, you're going to see that that population C is going to have significantly higher growth at the end because it's exponentially growing. This is a population with unlimited resource, so their population is going to be increasingly high at the very end, despite all of these populations starting off with an initial of 100 individuals to begin with. It's population C, the exponential growth, that's going to have significantly high growth rate at the end. And now, the last population that we're going to examine is a population that is growing exponentially, but there is a carrying capacity. So, in some environment, there is a cap of how many individuals that environment can support because of limited amount of resources. So if you have limited amount of resources in your environment, the population is going to grow, but then they're going to cap off at a certain point in time. And also, if they surpasses the carrying capacity, the population will actually decline back. So essentially now we're working with an equation that's a little bit more complicated, but still we're doing the similar mechanism as we done before. The change in population over the change in time now, so the number of birth, is going to be represented by R times the carrying capacity minus the initial population divided by the carrying capacity times the initial population. So carrying capacity is the number of individuals that that environment can support. If the environment surpasses that number of individuals, that carrying capacity, again, you're going to see a decline. How to use this equation is, again, let's go ahead and plug in the initial population, which is 250. Okay, so now the rate of growth is going to be 1.2 instead. So now our rate of growth is 1.2. It's no longer 1.5 as we discussed. The carrying capacity for this population, we're going to set it as 1,000. Okay, so rate of growth is 1.2, carrying capacity is 1,000. Let's go ahead and do the initial population and how we can get to N1. So plugging everything in, okay, our initial population is 250. We have to take 1,000 minus 250 divided by 1,000. So do that portion first in your calculator. Whatever you get there, multiply that by 1.2 and then times it by 250, which is the initial population, and you're going to get 225. Another thing I want to mention as well is that when you're doing the calculations, if you're getting decimal places, make sure you either round up or round down because you can't have point something of an individual. So make sure you keep that in mind as well. So now you have 225. Remember, this is the number of birth, okay? It's just the number of birth. It's not the number of the total, which is asking for here. So to find the total number, you have to take 225 and add it to 250. 225 added to 250, that gives you 475. Okay, so make sure whatever number of birth here, you add it to the starting population, which is 475. This is going to be N1. So moving from N1 to N2, now we're going to plug in 475 N1 as our initial population now. You're going to do the same thing. The carrying capacity is still 1,000 minus 475, whatever that is, divided by 1,000 times that to 1.2 times that to 475 now. Okay. And so when you do that, you're going to get 299. Now 299, that's just the number of birth. So you have to add 299 to 475, which is the parents, and that's going to give you 774. That goes into N2. Go ahead and complete this all the way until N5. I know your lab manual may have cut out N5. Add in another column and solve it for N5. Now remember, once your population surpasses carrying capacity, you're going to get a negative number. That essentially is the number of death. So your population is going to decline a little bit if it surpasses carrying capacity, if it surpasses 1,000. So please keep that in mind. So what we should see is the carrying capacity curve, okay? The population is going to grow a lot initially, but if this population is set at 1,000, once it reaches that 1,000 rate, you're going to see it stabilizing. Okay? Now, keep in mind in the real world, even though a population may be set at 1,000 or whatever the carrying capacity is, if it overshoots the carrying capacity, it can overshoot it quite a bit. And in the real world, sometimes you may see that it takes many decades before it actually decreases until carrying capacity. So you don't always see this nice trend like this in the real world. So please keep that in mind. Okay. And then make sure you plot population D when you're done. So go ahead and work on this at home. Do all of the populations that we discussed. Let me know if you have any questions. And some last things that we're going to discuss are that there can be some factors that limit population growth that can be either density dependent or independent. If we talk about disease outbreak and if there's a lot of increase of competition for food, spading, and mating, all of these factors, if you notice, they tend to be biotic factors, living factors. Living factors are affected by the density of the environment. If the environment is crowded or not crowded, these things can tend to drive the population lower to a much more extreme because they are affected by the density in the environment. So, for an example, if you have a disease outbreak, if the population is very dense, if there's a lot of individuals living close to one another, you're going to see a huge death rate very rapidly because all the individuals are close together. The disease outbreak can spread much faster. Um, on the opposite hand, if the population are not as dense, if the individuals are dispersed, it's going to take a longer time for the disease to spread, and it's going to take a longer time for the growth rate to decline. On the opposite hand, you can have factors that can affect the growth that is not dependent on the density at all. These tends to be abiotic factors. Abiotic factors such as natural disaster, if a natural disaster hits, it's going to completely wipe out the population regardless if the population is densely distributed or not. If we talk about carrying capacity is going to fall under density dependent. A population that is set at 1,000, whatever the carrying capacity is, it's going to be affected by the density in the environment. So that is essentially it for the pre-recording video for this week's lab. When I see you again in class, we're going to work on part 2 and we are going to practice some sustainable way of fishing without depleting the ecosystem. Thank you for so much for listening, and we'll see you in lab this week.